Welcome to Muskegon Rising, a community service project of the Muskegon Rotary Club. Our purpose is to create lasting positive change. We've been doing that here since 1916. So, let's get started.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Muskegon Rising, hosted by the Muskegon Rotary Club. I'm your host, Aaron Mikey, and today I'm here with Ken Efting with the Muskegon County Airport. Welcome, Ken.
Hey, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. There's some really cool things going on at the airport.
Yeah, there's been a lot of change in the last couple of years, and I think that it's important that the public know that I think it's going to be a shocker for a lot of people that haven't been out there in a while.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about, you're going through some major construction and infrastructure updates to the terminal. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so we're finishing up about a $3.3 million renovation. Many people are going to remember the terminal as a 1994, kind of like a walk back in time when you enter the main entryway. All of that's gone. New main entry, new roof, new front facade, new carpet, new paint, new lighting. It's getting a whole facelift there, and it's really snapping it out of the 20th century and bringing us up to speed here to go with our new airline.
So probably the most important update inside is where the restrooms are located. Why don't you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I tell people, we're borderline infamous for not having restrooms behind security. And a quick sentence on that is the terminal was built before 9/11 and before the advent of the TSA. So it wasn't designed with a TSA checkpoint in mind. So the restrooms were in the middle. So people had to come out of security if they had to use the restroom before the quick flight to Chicago. But we got the resources together and built 2 family ADA compliant restrooms with drinking fountains and water bottle fillers behind security, and those are set to be done next week.
That's amazing.
Yep.
It's just hard to believe that it hadn't been updated since before 9/11.
It's the single biggest things that passengers I wouldn't say complained about, but they noted it in their travels through Muskegon. So we're checking that box and getting that one in the past, and we'll be on our way.
So our airport is really helping drive economic growth in Muskegon County and the region. What commercial routes are currently available, and then what do you have coming forward?
Yeah, so right now, with the new airline Denver Air Connection, we're doing 2 daily flights to Chicago O'Hare. And they partner with United and American, so you can book directly from either of those 2 airlines with Muskegon as your starting point or your final destination. We're obviously looking to expand on that, but we got to get the demand up first. We need to get that airplane about 80% full flight to flight. Now, one thing we've got now that we haven't had in the past is Denver Air is willing to open up the Detroit market or the Delta market. Maybe Minneapolis is in the mix as well. So we haven't had that since 2010 with Mesaba Airlines, which many of your listeners probably have never even heard of. So that's exciting. And then we recently received a grant from the state to look at restarting service to eastern Wisconsin, particularly Milwaukee for Muskegon. And then this is a joint effort with Manistee, and we're trying to connect Green Bay, Manistee, Muskegon, and Milwaukee with daily air service. So that's coming online, hoping this summer. If not this summer, then we're going to have it for next summer. It will be seasonal, though.
That's really amazing. So you'll be able to take a jet to Milwaukee.
Hoping a jet. It might be a prop plane. That route has traditionally been a prop plane, but
okay.
We'll see. The industry is radically different now than it was in 2010. So we're gonna see what we can do about it.
Super exciting. So commercial is growing in Muskegon. Yep. You're working really hard to make sure that those routes get expanded. You need more ridership, of course.
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit about private plane traffic at the airport.
Yeah, and it's often overlooked, but 95% of the usage of our airport is private general aviation. The commercial service is what benefits 99% of the people that use it, but we have 30,000 takeoff and landings a year in Muskegon, and about 26,000 of those is just general aviation. So that averages out, you're over 100 a day on some days, and it's largely seasonal. Obviously, a lot more in the summer. We'll have days in the summertime around the holidays, the 4-day weekends, where we'll have 200 takeoff and landings in a day. So those days we call it Little O'Hare, but it's often overlooked, but it's a critical infrastructure piece in West Michigan for that aspect alone. There's 84 aviators based at Muskegon. So we've got 84 airplanes, mix of jet, small single engine, twins, turboprops. We have helicopters. We have the active duty at Coast Guard Air Station there. And of course the airline. But the demand is pretty high, and that's why we have our own FAA air traffic control tower in Muskegon, is because the airspace is busy.
That's amazing, 30,000 flights. I live between the airport and the lake, and I never like hearing that copter take off because I'm immediately thinking somebody's in the water that's in a bad position.
Yep. They do a daily patrol, but around 11 a.m. So if it's around 11 a.m. next summer or this summer coming up, you'll know it's just their normal routine patrol.
Good. So can you mention some of the private airlines? I know you said we talked at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and you said your hangars are full. Can you talk about some of the private jets are in there and the corporations that use the airport?
Sure. And then this ties into the economic impact. But, coming out of COVID, there was the pandemic first, and then there was a pilot shortage. And that drove a huge spike in demand for flight schools and kids learning to fly to start careers as airline pilots. And as a result, a lot of people bought airplanes. So we constantly have a waiting list for hangars that we're trying to figure out resourceful ways to meet that demand. The cost of construction is somewhat cost prohibitive at this point, but we're working on it, and we're finding some ways to get some grants and things along that lines. But the demand has never been higher in the general aviation side. Now, on the private corporation side, a lot of big industry and commercial leaders in West Michigan, they have their own private aircraft that they fly for business. And there's several of them based at Muskegon. For the most part, they like to remain private, but it drives a lot of economic impact. These guys are flying out of state, making business deals, coming in. There's a great example right now. You don't think it was a consideration of Costco that they can land their Gulfstream a half mile away from their new store in Norton Shores. And they come in fairly often. When they were doing the Fruitport Township planning meetings, they were flying into Muskegon on their private aircraft. Nestle, Gerber Baby Food, so they're working on a project up around Whitehall. There's a lot of economic impact there. And that's just the private side. Then you have the people coming to Muskegon on Denver Air Connection, and they're spending money, and they're bidding hotel rooms, and they're buying second homes out of the Chicago market. So the economic impact, MDOT just looked at it recently, and we're right around $58 million a year.
That's amazing.
Yep.
I can vouch for how busy you are. I had the unfortunate experience of getting in a little fender bender. Somebody chose to hit me by accident. And getting a rental car was super challenging. And it was just because the airport is so busy. So really great to see that. Yep,
and we're working on rental cars too. Ground transportation ties right into air transportation. So we've got a second rental car company on board now. They're Mid-Michigan Rentals. They're going through a rebrand. They're local. They're keyless and counterless. Use an app on your phone to book it and open the door and start the car, and you're off. So they've got a presence at Muskegon. They're doing well. Budget Avis is there, and we're trying to court some others. So
awesome.
Yep.
Federal funding and state funding, you've already mentioned some grants. They're absolutely huge to small regional airports. So talk a little bit about the funding that you receive and why that's so critical to support the airport.
Sure. Good question, Aaron. So the cost of pavement is just astronomical, right? So we just kicked off on Monday a $22 million renovation out there for some pavement. And without federal funding, obviously, that's not something Muskegon County can foot the bill for. So the FAA, there's a lot of grant opportunities with them and both MDOT to solicit fundings. And we've been working really hard on that the last couple of years to find outside funding to improve the airport. And we've, got creative in grant writing. Political support is a big deal. Congresswoman Skolton is a heavy hitter for us. Outside of party lines and political alliances, she loves our airport. She understands that it's critical for West Michigan, and she lobbies hard for us in federal funding. And we've had some wins in that realm. That $22 million project is one of the most expensive ones in the state of Michigan this year. So we've done well to position ourselves for federal funding. We're looking at getting a new air traffic control tower in 2027. So that'll be a big one as well. And so I like where we're at. The funding so far has remained unchanged. And we aggressively chase grants all the time. That's the key to growth. And that's what the successful airports in Michigan have done, is they've found ways to get other people to pay for their improvements. So
Wonderful. Well, and it supports our local economy, so it tells a really regional economy. You mentioned Pavement.
yeah.
Tell us the statistics around how much concrete and asphalt are around that airport and where you could go.
When I started there, it was kind of a staggering statistic. So we have about 4.4 million square feet of pavement out there. And that's just a number to most people. They don't understand what it is. But that's the same amount of pavement as US 31 from the airport to Ludington. So when we talk about, construction project and a rehabilitation of a runway, and the numbers seem staggering, that's why. It's a lot. You might see a highway like that get redone every 25, 30 years, but the condition of the runways and stuff, it has to be pristine at all times. So we can't have potholes out there. So we're staying on top of it, but it's a lot of pavement and it's a lot of work in maintaining it year round.
I would imagine, you mentioned year round, West Michigan, and especially this past winter, I'm sure it created some challenges to keep it clear for those planes coming in and out. Yeah,
snow removal is a tough one for us because we're about 1.5 miles from the runway 6 approach is the Hoffmaster State Park, and where Lake Michigan's right there, so we are always getting lake effect snow. And we can't use salt or any sort of corrosive chemicals like that on the airfield. So our first strategy is mechanical, plow it, and we have a giant broom that sweeps it off. That's our first line of defense. The second, and if we get ice, which we had particularly a lot of ice this winter, is we have chemical de-icers that are non-corrosive. But they're very expensive. It costs us about $5,500 every time we de-ice a runway. So we try to use that sparingly, and we attack it with the plows and the brooms and the snow blowers. And we pretty much plow continuously. It's such a big challenge. Our team is awesome. I mean, we'll go into 24-hour mode, and we always have a leg up on Mother Nature. So far, knock on wood, we've been able to stay ahead of it.
That's awesome. The impact you see at the airport relative to job creation, local business opportunities. You had mentioned a restaurant. Why don't you talk a little bit more about how you see the airport driving jobs in the local economy?
Yeah, so this is a good question because I like to try and blend the air service, the commercial air service, with the general aviation side of things. The air service is what's important to 99% of folks. But that general aviation community is what uses the airport the most. So we have to find a way to meet both of those markets. And what we do is with things like the restaurant, that the restaurant appeals to the general public, it appeals to the airline passenger, and it also appeals to the general aviation folks because they'll fly into Muskegon for food. And that's a factor in whether or not they fly into our airport in our area, because then they don't have to go anywhere. They can grab lunch, stop, grab fuel, get a bite to eat, continue on to another airport. The Oshkosh Air Show in Wisconsin, Muskegon's often a last fuel stop for a lot of people coming from the East Coast. Having a place for them to grab a bite to eat before they hit the chaos of Oshkosh is a big one too. So the restaurant's a big reason why we want to blend those markets together. But another reason is the airport business park. There's about 1,100 people that work within a half mile of the airport there, and it's kind of void of restaurants, with a couple exceptions of G&L and then a couple of new ones in the strip mall there, and then you got the Homestead Tavern, and those are great. But there's an opportunity there as well, and plus we're the only passenger service airport in Michigan that has a restaurant on the front side of security. So the 1994 design with the checkpoint hurts us for the bathrooms, but it helps us for the restaurant.
Interesting. Yep. That's really wonderful. So we'll look for that restaurant to open soon. I know you're looking for somebody to come in and...
Yeah, the big thing is the renovations have hit us hard in the wallet. So restaurant renovations are expensive. So we're being very frugal. We're using our staff to do as much of it as we can. But we're hoping... I'm optimistic we're gonna meet some marks and make the public happy on that one.
So you mentioned airfare. Muskegon had a huge airfare 20-something years ago, and there's a new one that's taking off. And I know this wasn't in our questions, but I know you can talk to it. So tell us a little bit about the airfare that's occurring at the airport now and how that's impacting.
So Wings Over Muskegon came back in 2023. We partner with the Michigan Flight Museum out of Ypsilanti down there at Willow Run Airport. And they put it on for us. We facilitate and do all the logistics on the ground to give them a good airport. And it's been well received. It's not the airfare. That's a message we need to get out. As the airfare was huge. It got too big. It would take the airport months to prepare for it. And, a lot of resources were focused on that. And I have my opinions of it, but our goal now is to make sure we have a right-sized air show for Muskegon and the city of Norton Shores. We don't want to close roads and block off neighborhoods and have people having to get out of their homes and really have an impact to the city. So it's been well received. We paused it this year for the big $22 million construction project, but we're going to bring it back next year. We haven't gone public with the dates, but we picked them.
Awesome. So looking ahead, if there's one thing that really excites you about the airport, what is it?
I mean, it's the things we've talked about. The public wanted the air show back. They wanted a new airline. They wanted the bathrooms. They want the restaurant. And we've just been ticking them off, the check boxes and working down the list. And we're almost there. So I tell people, the excitement is the sum of all those things. And we're excited to... The one I'm really excited about is the restaurant. That's a heavy hitter. It gives people a reason to come out there, not just for flying, to just see the place, sit down, watch airplanes. Airports have a magical draw about them, and the community. I can post on Facebook about any subject, and somebody will ask about the restaurant. What's going on with it? When is it coming back? So it was missed, and that's a testament to how good of a job the Brownstone team did back then. It's been 8 years and people are still asking about it. So we're going to get that one. That one's personal for me.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to help from the college perspective with chefs and student chefs that need to work while they're in training. So we'll stay in contact about that.
Yeah.
So you're really driving a huge portion of the transportation changes and initiatives in Muskegon County. What would you tell our listeners about the value of flying out of Muskegon?
They need to forget about preconceived notions from the past. Denver Air is an independent airline. They control their pricing, right? So if people have preconceived notions that it was always more expensive, it's not anymore. We went to free parking, which is a game changer. You don't have to bug your neighbor for a ride at 5 a.m. anymore. You can just drive there, leave your car. It'll be waiting for you when you get back. Won't cost you a dime. And we tell people you got to look at the value of your time. If you're flying out of Grand Rapids, you're gonna have to leave your house at 2 hours before their flight and sort out parking there and get on the shuttle, get in there. If you're parking in the big garage, it's quite a bit more expensive. And the baggage with DAC is far less. They only charge $15 for a check bag. So if you look at the sum of the cost of travel, more often than not, and that's true, the majority of the time, it's cheaper to go out of Muskegon if the connection time works for you. Now, if you're going somewhere with a purpose, then you have to be there at a certain time. The times may not line up, and we understand that. But yeah, that's the two things. Forget about the preconceived notions. Look at the total cost of travel and check Muskegon first before you look at other options. You'd be surprised.
So as they're checking Muskegon Airport first, where should they go to book?
We tell people you can use Google Flights is a real good way because it'll shop American against United, and you'll be able to see which one's lower for where you're going. But then go directly to that airline to book it. Go to United.com, go to AA.com, and book your flight directly there. DAC is able to work with, when they have irregular operations, a change or delay or whatever. When you book directly from those airlines, they can make the changes right there in the airport and get you set up.
Good. Connecting to O'Hare.
Yep.
There's a tremendous amount of opportunity for flights leaving O'Hare. So talk about that, and then talk about O'Hare's on-time flights.
Yeah.
Because those are critical for people to understand when they leave Muskegon.
That's a good one. So O'Hare's the second most connected airport in the United States behind Atlanta. 240 to 280 destinations is where you can fly to from Chicago, depending on the season and the time of day and everything else. So Muskegon is well connected to the world by serving O'Hare. Now, there's a lot of misconnections. I battle it on social media all the time about Chicago being unreliable. The data suggests that Chicago's on-time percentage is right in the middle at 15th in the country of the top 30 large hubs in the nation. So, they're right at 77%. And it's important to understand that the difference between the 15th ranked airport and the number 1 ranked airport is only about 3% of on-time percentage. So large hubs in general nationwide are very on time. So Chicago's right there. Do they have problems? Yeah, every airport has problems with delays and cancellations. But there is a narrative out there that it's head and shoulders worse than everywhere else. That's just not true by the data.
So from Muskegon to O'Hare, 240 plus connections.
Yep.
And 77% on-time flights, which is really good.
Yep, it is. And through this winter, our on-time percentage at Muskegon was actually higher than Grand Rapids. So with Denver Air. Now, that's mostly on them, but it's also on our snow removal team, making sure we got clear runways for those guys right when they're ready to take off at 9:05 in the morning. But, the reliability is there. And that was the number one factor that my team, our brain trust in the advisory committee, and then the county board of commissioners. That was it. I mean, is your airline going to get our passengers where they want to be when they say they're going to be there? Because that's, at the end of the day, that's what most people care about first. So we put that number one above all else.
Awesome team. I mean, it takes Denver Air to do what they do and your team to do what they do to make sure that things are clicking well at Muskegon Airport.
Yep, the air traffic controllers and the fixed base operators. I tell people, and it's another thing that's often not even known to most people, there's 110 people across 8 organizations that work in that main strip day to day there at the airport. TSA agents, your rental car people, the Coast Guard, private commercial people working there, the fixed base operator, executive air, the ATC folks, everybody. So it's a big operation out there.
So Ken, we've covered a lot, and I know there's more that we could cover. Is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know about before we close?
You got to come out and visit us and see, because it's really a jaw-dropping change when you go into the terminal now. People are going to walk through that front entry and just going to be like, wow, with the new lighting. It's not only, brought up to date, but it's the latest and greatest. And then you gotta get rid of the old narratives and start fresh with us. Denver Air is the real deal. You can book right on United and American, but I think everybody's going to be pleased with the changes out there, and it's turning out to be a absolute, not just an alternative, but the primary great way to travel.
Ken, I'll be remiss if I don't say this as well. You're a local individual, local guy who came back home. And thank you so much for your military service. Retired from the Air Force, right?
Yep.
So thank you so much for that service and bringing that expertise back here to have such an awesome passion to rebuild and rebrand our Muskegon Airport.
I tell people all the time, I didn't come, this is a little bit of a tangent here, but I didn't come from an airport management background. And I tell folks, I said, when I was in the Air Force, we just solved problems, and we had plenty of problems to solve when I got here, and we just jumped in and you hit a roadblock and you find a different way, and you just keep moving forward and never stop. And that's really the approach I've taken with things. And I've been very grateful to have a team of the advisory committee. We have an incredible brain trust of decision makers with a vast array of aviation experience, and the county board's been great. And frankly, the city of Norton Shores, the city of Muskegon, everybody's on board with this. It's that's helped immensely, is that the community and the public seems to be really, really behind us right now.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your leadership. I know that was partially learned in the military for sure. And you're doing great things. Keep it up. Look forward to seeing what the airport becomes in our future.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you having me on. And this is great. And I've been to a few Rotary meetings, and I think I'm going to be joining up soon.
We'd love to have you. Very welcoming group.
Great. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks so much, Ken. Thank you for listening to Muskegon Rising, a podcast hosted by the Muskegon Rotary Club. If you know of somebody who's doing something amazing in our community, please email us at muskegonrising@muskegonrotary.org. Until next time, have a wonderful day.